Welcome to the Rock and Roll Show podcast. We're here to share the thrill of experiencing live music together with strangers and with friends, and to get to know our guests a little bit better through their concert experiences. I'm your host, Alex Gadd, and I've found that the topics we're going to discuss today are good conversation starters when meeting new people, both personally and professionally. Today, we'll be talking with Chandler Hutchison. Chandler works at Book Thinkers, a marketing firm for authors to help them reach more readers, grow their audiences, and supercharge their impact. Chandler is someone I've gotten to know as I've started my podcast journey. And so, Chandler, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm looking forward to talking about live music with you.
Me too. I'm excited to be here. It's one of those conversations that you can have with absolutely anyone. It's an awesome way to get to know people, talking music, talking shop. We've only known each other a week or two now, whatever it is, but feels like we're friends. We got to talk music for a good while the other day. So I'm excited for this conversation. I know everyone says that at the beginning of a podcast, but what's better than getting to talk music, live music, artists you love? It's a great topic. I'm excited for the show.
Oh, I'm so glad. I am too. Thanks. So let's start off by just framing your experience with live music. What kind of artists do you see when you go see live music? About how many concerts have you seen? Give us a picture of what kind of concert goer you are.
Yeah, so I would guess that I've seen somewhere between 25 and 35 live shows. I can give a lot of credit to my dad. I'm one of four boys, and he got us into music very young. He's a Rolling Stones guy, so no Beatles in my house. It was only Rolling Stones. He had to
Okay.
pick that great divide. And, we started going to see some shows of bands that he had liked, and we sort of gained interest in. My brothers and I are all within 5 years of each other. So four of us in 5 years. And we all went to see Dave Matthews Band when we were younger. U2, got to see Train, Maroon 5. So my dad was great about sort of bridging the music that he loved, and the classic rock, and moving into, some of those jam bands like DMB in the 90s too. A little bit of a softer style rock, when it comes to like a Train or a Maroon 5, like we talked about the other week. What is rock and roll now? That's a whole nother question.
Right. And it's interesting. When I started off thinking about this podcast, rock and roll is where I come from, and I'm a classic rock guy, but rock and roll is everything. If I use the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as my guide, and we've got Cher in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and we've got rappers in the, Dr. Dre's in the Hall of Fame, and we've got soul musicians, and we've got pop stars. And so, rock and roll started off as just pop music. In the
Mhm.
50s and 60s, that was pop music, and the alternative was Bing Crosby and Frank Sinatra. And so rock and roll was the kids' music. And that's how I look at it. It doesn't have to be two guitars, bass, and drums. It doesn't have to be heavy. It just has to be popular music. And that, our tastes really don't seem to have changed that much over the last 55 years, starting with the Beatles and the Stones, which is really where I understand that rock and roll started with Bill Haley and the Comets and Chuck Berry and Fats Domino and then Elvis. But for me, it's really the Beatles and Dylan, and then the Stones and everybody else that came out of that. So yeah, I'm in the same place. I have seen many concerts, and I'm a Rolling Stones guy too. I have one tattoo on my body. It's the Rolling Stones logo.
I love
So
that.
that's a good place to start.
I'll throw one little Rolling Stone story out, which I've adopted from my dad. I don't know if any of my brothers have, but every single car my dad has bought his entire life, the first song that he gets there and plays is Start Me Up. Every single time he takes that first drive in a new car. So I actually bought a new Jeep back in August. First song I had to play, get the Stones on there and Start Me Up. It's the way to christen a new car in my family.
Oh, I think it's great. I never thought about it, but that's ideal for a new car. I mean, I should play it every time I get in my car just to make sure my car starts.
Absolutely, especially on a cold day out there. Make sure it's warming
Yeah,
up the right way.
that's right. It's funny when I was younger, I'm a huge Beatles and a Stones fan, so I don't follow the rules. I can't do it with baseball teams. I have to like only one baseball team, but I love both the Stones and the Beatles. And every time I moved into a new place in college and after college, I would play Sergeant Pepper's as soon as I set up my sound system. That was like okay, I'll break in the sound system now.
I
So I get it. I
I
get it.
love
But
that. That's
let's
an awesome
let's
tradition.
jump in. What was your first concert? I mean, that's such a formative experience for me and for so many people that I've met. What was your first concert?
Yeah, so I think that my first concert ever, I think was either the Dave Matthews Band or Coldplay. I'm not sure which one it was, but it was
Okay.
either Dave Matthews or Coldplay at the Xfinity Center in Mansfield, Mass.
Oh,
My
got it.
Yeah, and
Nice.
seeing a lot of really great live shows there. So I don't know whether it was Dave Matthews Band or Coldplay, but it was one of those two.
Okay, how old were you about?
Middle school,
Middle
somewhere in middle
school.
school, sixth, seventh, eighth grade, 12, 13, 14 years old, something like that, going with my family.
So all three of your brothers, your dad and mom?
Yep, full car, pack up the Suburban,
Right.
and get
Family
over to
truckster and
Xfinity.
off you go.
Yeah. Yeah, really
That's
great
great.
experience and fun. I've loved Coldplay forever. Dave Matthews is a band my dad loves. One of my brothers, they've been several times to see them, but Coldplay I put on just absolutely an unbelievable show. The song Yellow comes on and they put out 1,000 yellow balloons that are 10 times the size of my head out throughout the crowd, and really just a really amazing experience, especially everyone knows 10 more Coldplay songs than they think they do, if you had to ask them.
I agree. I think, I have found Coldplay to be really just talented. I don't love all their songs, but Chris Martin is just talented, and the guys that he plays with are just they've known each other forever apparently, and they are just a talented band.
Yeah, they definitely
That's
are.
great. What's do you have any memories? So I know that now I'm asking from the Coldplay concert. Do you have any clear memories?
Yeah, the two clear memories that I'll always have are one, like I mentioned, the balloons. I mean,
Yep.
how cool is that? Especially whatever age I was, I'm just sitting there in absolute awe, staring up and trying to hit them up in that big lawn section. And, it's
Yeah.
just an absolute blast being there with the family. But the other one that I definitely distinctly remember from that show is that Chris Martin actually came up to the lawn while they were performing, and security had a little round stage that he came out on. But the fact that and at the time, late 2000 or late
Early
early
2000s.
2000s,
Yeah.
2008, let's call it something like
Right.
that. I mean, they're one of the biggest bands in the world. Chris Martin's one of the single most successful artists on the planet, so I'll always remember that too. Getting to meet, well, not meet Chris Martin, but getting to meet celebrities or people with any sort of fame, you realize that they're just people. And that was one of those humanizing moments with someone that I idolized, where I'm like, how cool is that he's going to come back out past 10,000 fans to get to the 10,000 in the back. I thought that was a really cool moment. And that's something that definitely stuck with me for, an initial live show.
Sure. And just for people who aren't aware, in Mansfield, Massachusetts, it's an outdoor amphitheater with a covered seated area and then a lawn system. And those amphitheaters exist all over the country. But that's one of the preeminent ones. I love that place. I've only been there once, but I loved it when I saw a show there.
The best part is that every artist always comes out, "Hello, Boston," and you're
Yeah.
thinking,
And
"Well, we're in Mansfield. It's about 40 minutes outside, but we'll take it. We'll count it."
yeah, look, when I live in the New York area, and when people play in Jersey, they can be in Newark, they could be at East Rutherford at the Meadowlands, they could be anywhere, and they say, "Hey, New York."
They could be in Stamford, Connecticut, for all you know.
Exactly. Hey, New York. Yeah, that's a nice place to start. And from that, what band do you think you've seen the most? Have
So
you
you
seen
and
any
I had
band
chat.
more than once?
Yeah, so I've seen a couple bands more than once, but the one that I've seen by far the most is a friend of mine. His band Flip Turn. So, not one of the big boys that I've mentioned, getting to see Coldplay and U2 and Train and all these cool groups. But my friend Dylan, he's had a band for probably, geez, 8, 9 years now called Flip Turn, and I've seen them somewhere between 10 and 15 times, I'd imagine, ranging from venues where there was 40 people to now over 3,000 people. So that's a really cool live music experience, watching that band mature and develop and get to play different stages and indoor, outdoor, different crowds, totally different vibes. I mean, I always say it about my friend Dylan. It's fun. The bigger the stage you give him, the more he's up there dancing around and covering ground, going crazy. So really cool progression for me, not only as a fan but as a friend, to get to see him really blossom and expand his reach and doing what they're doing. It's really impressive.
It's interesting. Our mutual friend Luke turned me on to them when he told me about talking to you. and I've been listening to them, and then we talked about them last week, and they really are something. So, just about Flip Turn, you've seen them progress not just in size of venue, but and acumen on stage, but also their music must have changed and evolved over time. That must be pretty special to watch.
100%. And Dylan wouldn't like me saying this, but the first single that they ever put out has been scrubbed from the internet. They took it off YouTube, they took it off Spotify, they took it off everything because they just said, wow, the artists we were, at 18 years old, 17 years old versus 25, 26 is a world difference. So, yeah, it's been a really amazing experience watching them grow, watching members of the band change and new members come in, and watch them bring in management and sign with a label. They're signed to the same label as the Lumineers. That's the biggest band
Mhm.
at their current label. But watching everything they're doing, from collaborating with new artists and how many hundreds of festivals that a small band has to go and, be, spot number 24 out of 27 at. You don't
Right.
realize those things until someone starts telling you about it, because it's something you don't think about. So I've definitely watched them progress in a lot of ways. And I always say it about them that they do a lot of the little things that other bands don't. So that's been cool to watch them attack social media in a different way, get playlists on Spotify of each band member's favorite music at that point in time, getting all their tours posted a million ways. They have a street team that goes out and does, some marketing for them. So watching it, also the business side, watching them evolve on the business side and take it seriously and start to grow in that way. I've got to watch them grow in a million different ways. And he's half a year older than me, and I feel like a proud dad half the time.
I totally get it. Now, when you go to see them nowadays, do you actually listen or do you hang out backstage? How do you see a Flip Turn concert these days?
So I'll say that I always love getting to pull up and say I'm on the list. So that's the best part about going to a Flip Turn show, is sometimes there's a side door, like a VIP list, and you get to walk around that, 2 blocks of people wrapped around the corner, but always in the general crowd, until this last show that I went to, actually. So Dylan and Flip Turn hosted a music festival down in Gainesville, Florida, called Playground, which is the name of one of their songs. And they sold about 2,000 tickets, and they had 2 stages going, which was really cool. So, one band up for 40 minutes, you turn around, the next band starting right when this set finishes. And we actually got staff and musician passes for that event. So we were able to sort of be on the side of the stage and consume it from backstage a little bit. But yeah, I've gotten to hang out in the green rooms after shows and getting to hang out side stage and backstage sort of deal. But I always love being in front of the show and consuming the concert. I think I'm probably hitting as many lyrics as anyone there, other than Dylan singing it. And
Mhm.
I'm always there to jam out and have a good time. I'm as big of a fan as anyone, so I like being right in the crowd and getting there dancing with everybody.
That's great. And do you still listen to them just on your iPhone or in the car? Is it
Absolutely.
still good? That's the key. I've been friendly with a couple of bands in the past as well. And I always found that the minute I lost interest in the music, I lost interest. Like I still could be friends
100%.
with them, but then I didn't want to go see them live anymore because going and just hanging out backstage gets very isolating. And then you're really not at a concert. Or even hanging out side stage. It's not the same thing. You got to be out in the crowd for me personally. And not everyone's that way. Some people like the hangout. I like the music.
I agree. I'm there for the music,
Right.
100%. We can hang out afterwards, but I don't need to hang out while that hour or 90-minute performance is going on. I want to be where the energy is. I want to be where everyone's dancing and has their arms up and is singing every word. That's the energy I want to be around.
Right, me too. Sharing the experience with your friend who's on stage, because if you're sitting backstage, they're having an experience that you're not even having. You can't even tell them how much you enjoyed it afterwards.
Yeah, and I can't make a
So
goofy face or try to make them laugh if I'm sitting backstage. I need the eye
true,
contact.
true. I like it. So what is the most recent show you've seen?
So the most recent show I seen was this festival down in Florida
Okay,
a few
got it.
months ago. So I'll try not to belabor on that too much, but
Oh no,
really,
that's okay.
really amazing event. A lot of local to the southeast artists, which was great, from Atlanta and Texas and Alabama and South Carolina. And they had, I think, maybe 12 or 13 artists at this playground festival. And some of them were bands that I had known. Some of them were bands that I had no idea about and became fans of from going and seeing the experience. And that's a really cool opportunity too, for those people that haven't been to a music festival. And it doesn't have to be a Lollapalooza or one of those absolutely crazy ones, but you go to a small time festival and you're going to get an intimate experience with fans of bands that only have 7,000 followers on Instagram. And you're going to make friends with people next to you, and you're going to get to, be fans of a new band on stage. I knew one song by this band called Easy Honey, and I downloaded 15 more afterwards, because you're in there getting that live experience. So that was the last show that I went to. It was so much fun. It was 2 p.m. to 11 p.m., just nonstop.
Oh, that's perfect. Now, is that something we can look forward to seeing again at the end of this year?
I believe so. So they've done it 2 years in a row. I don't know what it's looking like for the start of next year, but I'd imagine that January or February of next year, unless they want to do it when it's a little bit warmer out. It was a little chilly, even though it's down in Gainesville. It was about
Yeah.
28 degrees when Dylan got on stage towards the end of the night. It was funny
Oh,
seeing the Flip Turn fans commenting, it was worth the frostbite on the toes and that sort of thing on the social posts afterwards. But they are planning on getting that festival going again next year.
good. I'd like to go check that out. Have you seen any concerts that have really gone long? So festivals are one thing, and I've only been to a couple of festivals myself, but I have seen at least 5 concerts that have gone. I've been in the arena over 4 hours
Wow.
and seeing music for 4 hours. So have you ever had an experience like that?
Outside of the festivals, and I've been to Levitate, which is in Massachusetts, and a couple different ones, but outside of festivals, I think the longest show that I ever saw was Zach Brown Band, and they
Mhm.
only had one opener, which I was a little surprised by. And about halfway through the show, I'd imagine that they were probably on stage for about 3.5 hours, maybe 3:15 to 3.5. And about halfway through the show, and this, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better concert experience here. They say, we're going to do an intermission. And I'm thinking,
Mhm.
why'd you only have one opener if you have an intermission coming up? I would have thought maybe you have someone do 20, someone do 40, and you guys come up. And then after a 15-minute intermission, Zach Brown comes back on stage with Steven Tyler at Fenway Park. So this is when Aerosmith isn't touring, they're doing a Vegas
Right.
residency. And I in Fenway Park, Steven Tyler is a New England guy, get to hear
Boston guy.
walk this way and dream on and all these Aerosmith classics. But I mean, what a great show to go to, getting to see Steven Tyler. But that's probably the longest show I've been to, somewhere between 3:15, 3.5 hours, I think.
Yeah, that's a long show, and it's funny, almost all of the long shows I've seen have had an intermission as well. I've seen a lot of I used to go see Fish a lot,
Mm.
and I checked, and their New Year's shows, every time that I saw them at New Year's, those were long shows. They'd start at 8 and end at 1,
Ooh.
and there'd be 2 intermissions, but it was still a long, long show. And I saw Springsteen in 2016, and he did 4 straight hours. And that's when
Wow.
he was 68 or something, 67. And he did 4 hours straight on stage the whole time. Pretty impressive. I really like Zach Brown. I saw Zach Brown 3 times in the last 10 years. And every time they had an intermission, they were absolutely rock solid. They do great covers. They sound incredible. Great stage show. Really, that they're an incredible live band.
They put on quite the show. I've actually seen them 3 times as well. I've seen them at
I,
Fenway Park twice, and I've seen them over in
yeah,
Hartford once while I was going to school in Western Mass. They are unbelievable. The energy they bring
unbelievable.
is fantastic. The last album they put out, Jekyll and Hyde, is a lot of non-country music, so they do some really cool covers. They bring people. They're unbelievable performers. They do a great job.
Unbelievable. Truly talented, no doubt. What's the shortest concert you've ever seen?
So I was thinking about this before we hopped on, and funny enough, I actually came to it was sort of like a little impromptu show that we had pulled up to, but the band 3 Days Grace, the heavy
Mhm.
rock band, they
Yeah.
were performing just randomly in Patriots Place at Gillette Stadium. For those that don't know, Gillette Stadium, where the Patriots play, is a whole complex.
Mhm.
Shopping malls, hotels, there's 20 restaurants, it goes on and
Is
on.
that
And
Worcester, Mass? Worcester?
Foxborough, Massachusetts.
Foxborough. Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
so I don't remember why I was going there. Maybe going to a movie with my friends, walk around the mall. I'm in high school at this point, and in front of the Patriots Pro Shop, 3 Days Grace is performing, which I couldn't believe. I love them. We got them on in the basketball locker room and in the football locker room, all this stuff. So I got to just pull up and watch 3 Days Grace for about 25 minutes, which I couldn't believe. I don't know why they were doing it. And then I went to the Patriots game the next day, and their lead singer was singing the national anthem. So made a little
That's
more
pretty
sense that
cool.
they're in town and on site. But an impromptu show, had no idea they were performing, but got to watch them for probably 20, 25 minutes and loved every
That's
second of
great.
it.
Had you ever seen them before, or have you ever seen them since?
No, I haven't.
All
No.
right. Well, you've seen them. At
Yeah.
least it counts.
It's funny. I'm gonna count that one as a concert. I'm gonna count that one.
Totally. Totally. So, of all the shows you've seen, do you have a favorite? Is there a way to say there's a favorite show?
Yeah. I think so. I think that this is tough. I think that that Zach Brown show with Steven Tyler, I think
Mhm.
that's definitely top two. And I'm not sure if I can decide a top two, but my other one would be Khalid. Khalid is my favorite artist. He's about my age. He, dips into every genre possible. But I went a few years ago with the TD Garden in Boston, and I'd say that was my favorite concert. I think I'm a little biased. He is my favorite artist. I've been listening to him for years, all the formative years through college and everything, relating a lot to his music. And that show was so much fun. And there's, two or three songs which I love by him, which I didn't think he would play because you're in such a big venue. I don't know how many seats are in the garden, 20,000, something like that.
Just under. I think it's 19,000 or
Yeah.
19,500. Yeah.
And what he did is he sent all of his dancers and musicians backstage, just brought a stool out and sung acoustic for 3 songs. And I mean, just absolutely beautiful. I'm sitting there with my ex girlfriend and I'm wishing everyone in the arena would stop singing. I'm like, hey, Khalid's up there doing his thing acoustic. You guys gotta quiet down. But just from those 2 or 3 songs, I think that that's probably my favorite concert experience because I wasn't expecting to hear those couple tracks, and I was so
Mhm.
excited that I got to. But also, for a favorite singer who I'm such a fan of, he can sing anything. He has my favorite voice. If I could swap into anyone's voice, I would love to be able to sing like him. But him breaking down and doing, the total acapella by himself on stage, that made that concert experience really, really special for me.
That sounds great. And seeing your favorite artist usually
Yeah.
pays off in a big way. So that's great. I have to listen to more of his music. My daughter is really into him, and I never really, it's just not my style of music.
Yeah.
And as I've been doing this, I've been branching out as people have been throwing recommendations my way. So that's your favorite concert. Did you ever go to a concert and walk out and say, this sucked? This was
Oh,
just really
I ever
disappointing.
had that disappointing of a concert? There was one when I was a kid, which I knew was going to be a bad concert. It was called the Kiss concert, which was, Kiss 108 up in New
Oh,
England with a lot
sure.
of just really bad artists. So I'd say that probably because I've never, gone to a show expecting it to be bad. I wouldn't buy tickets. I've been to a couple country concerts with friends where I'm not there for me, where I don't
Mhm.
care about the music. I'm just there having a good time. So a couple of those would come to mind, like seeing Toby Keith. Rest in peace.
R.I.P. Toby
Yeah,
Keith just passed away 2 weeks ago.
rest in peace, Toby Keith. But
Yeah.
I had no interest in being there, and it was a fun show. But you can only enjoy hearing Red Solo Cup so many times while you're there. But I'll say a bad experience for someone else at a show. When I'm at this Kiss concert, Kiss 108,
Mhm.
it's a 8 hour festival, and we're like an hour and a half in, just hanging out, and there's a couple sitting few rows in front of us, fully decked out like Gene Simmons, thinking they're going to be seeing Kiss. And Alex, they are at a kids show. It's all high schoolers there and middle schoolers. It's Chris Brown and it's Lil Wayne and it's all these rappers and R&B artists, and I can't think of some of the bad pop music from back in the day, but a bad concert experience would be those two adults thinking that they're going to see Gene Simmons singing.
Yeah, that may be the best example of a disappointment at a concert of all time. Not happening to you, thankfully, but that's a good example. Oof.
At
Yikes.
14 or 15, I had secondhand disappointment for a week after that for them. They ended up getting and leaving, after a
Yeah,
couple
I
more
can only
sets.
imagine.
My
That is
goodness.
really funny because when you first said the Kiss concert, I was like, the way you said that doesn't sound like it's a Kiss concert.
No Detroit Rock City there. None.
No, that's too bad. You know what's funny? They We'll probably talk about this later, but Kiss was my first band, like the first band that I ever fell in love with. When I
Wow.
was a kid, they were just coming out. And so their ascension matched up with my awareness of pop music and rock music. And I just was a huge Kiss fan. So I understand those two people's disappointment if they didn't understand the game.
Well,
So you've already talked. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
was going to say a quick side note on Kiss. I'm not sure if you know this, being such a big fan. I didn't know anything about Gene Simmons, but I recently listened to him. His son is a comedian. So he was on a comics podcast that I love with his son, just talking. And I had no idea
Nick,
Gene Simmons.
right? His name's Nick.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I had no idea Gene Simmons never touched a single drug in his entire life, no alcohol, nothing in all those crazy years of touring, which absolutely blew me away. And the podcast hosts were saying the same thing. They're like, how could you be the front man for Kiss and have this crazy persona and go out and party and do all these things? And he said, I was just able to stay away from it. And that gave me a whole level of respect for Gene Simmons that I never would have known about.
Yeah, he's pretty a unique guy. There's no doubt. He's from, he was born in Israel and his name is Chaim. And he
Wow.
moved, yeah, his folks moved him to Queens, New York when he was, I don't know, 5, I'm going to say, really young. And he adopted his stage name based on a female actress named Jean Simmons. But Jean was this woman's name, and she was pretty famous, but not Marilyn Monroe famous, not
Yeah.
Bridget Bardot famous. So he chose Gene Simmons, and a fantastic transition from Chaim Waits, I think his name was, like a real Eastern European Jewish name, to Gene Simmons. And now when you say Gene Simmons, all you think of is the tongue and the fire and the
Yeah.
makeup. So
8-inch boots and everything else.
yeah, pretty amazing transition. So you've mentioned seeing Steven Tyler surprise you at the Zach Brown show. Have you had any other experiences like that? I find that those are some of the most memorable things that in my concert going
Mm.
experience. Have you had any other experiences like that? Have you seen any other shows like that?
So unfortunately, none of that level. There's been artists brought up at other shows that I can't quite recall, or, maybe some of the openers coming out and performing with the main band or vice versa. But Steven Tyler's the only one where I've sort of had that actual shock and awe reaction where my jaw drops and I'm looking at my friends like, oh my gosh, we're about to get to see Steven Tyler perform. Are you kidding me? I'm sitting there
Right.
screaming, walk this way, and then they go right into it. I'm, best 25 minutes of the concert without a doubt. But no, unfortunately, I haven't had any other like really cool guest appearances at any shows or cool features like that.
I hope that still happens in the post-COVID world. I don't know, but it
Mhm.
used to happen a lot in my experience. Well, I hope you get to see that again. Also, Zach Brown band is such a good cover band. They're so talented that they can play. I mean, in their regular set, they played Enter Sandman by Metallica, and they played Guns N' Roses songs, and they played all kinds of different cover songs and all kinds of things. So I imagine Aerosmith was right up their alley. Very talented live band.
Absolutely. Zach Brown is so amazing. Definitely, like I said, one of my couple favorite concerts. And they've toured
Yeah.
with so many people. They touch so many different genres of music. And Zach can sing in any style and really cover any song well, which is why that last album, Jekyll and Hyde, was so cool. He's, doing heavy rock. He does like a love ballad with Sarah Bareilles. And you're like, wow, this guy's
Yeah.
just doing everything.
Yeah, it was great. That was my favorite Zach Brown album of all, for sure.
Me too. Me
All right,
too.
I want to turn to the music venues that we've
Sure.
talked about, and that to me is a big determinant, not the main determinant, but certainly an important factor in a good show is the music venue. So, do you have a favorite music venue?
Do I have a favorite music venue? I've seen most shows that I've seen locally at all of the different stadiums and venues around here, but I would say a couple of the smaller ones in Boston that, are sort of like little holes in the wall that you got to be tapped into the live music scene to know. I'd say that those are probably my favorite venues. Being at Gillette Stadium with 65,000 people is cool, but when you go to Brighton Music Hall in Alston, Massachusetts, and you go see a show where they're only selling 250, 300 tickets. Those are my favorite venues because no matter where you are, you have one of the best seats in the house. You can stand off to the side and drink your beer and dance and enjoy it without, getting caught in anything. So I would say that those are my favorite kind of venues. I'd say Brighton Music Hall's one of them. Roadrunner is a newer one in Boston. That's about 3,000 people, which is awesome. House of Blues in Boston is, a historic venue, and my buddy Dylan's actually getting to play it towards the end of March, headlining it there, and so excited for that. It's right on the same street as Fenway Park. It's in a really cool part of Boston, and House of Blues is one of those venues that every artist dreams of playing when they come to Boston. It's sort of one of those stepping stones. So
Mhm.
I'd say that a couple of those smaller venues are my favorite.
Yeah, they've really built up, like on Lansdowne Street and all around Fenway. They've really built up the live music. The Jay Giles band started, and
Mm,
Aerosmith both started in, I can't remember what it's called, but there was a place right on Lansdowne Street behind Fenway Park
mm.
that all those bands used to play in the 70s when they were nobody. Jay Giles and Aerosmith are the two that come to mind for me. But that neighborhood seems to have really up leveled and classed up the whole joint. And that's great. I'd love to come up there and see a show up there.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a total side note. What is that most famous Jay Giles band song? What is that?
Centerfold is the most famous one.
So Centerfold. So one of my brothers, my brother Nick, one of his best friends, his mom was a backup dancer in that video. So I think of it every time I hear it. You can pick her out, the 2 seconds she's in it or whatever, just dancing in the background. But anytime I hear that song or any Jay Giles song, I was like, oh yeah.
That's great. Yeah, they're a funny band, right? They just disappeared. They had their biggest hit, Centerfold, was one of the top records of 1982. Went on a tour, broke up. That was the end.
That is
They had been a
sad.
band for 15 years already. As soon as they had a monster hit, they broke up.
Money always muddles it up, I imagine.
I
Not,
guess I don't know.
outside
Or
looking in.
egos. It's either money or egos. Do you have a concert venue you've been to and you're just thought, I never want to go back to that place? It actually negatively affected your ability to enjoy the music.
Negatively affected my ability to enjoy the music. I don't think so. I don't think that there's been a venue. There's been a bad seat or two,
Mhm.
behind a stanchion or a pole or something obstructing the view. But I don't think that there's been a venue where I've turned my nose up at it and said this isn't a place I'm going to be. And I think that's part of too, being a little bit selective in my live music. I'm not going to shows where I don't know the bands or have researched them or am interested in it. So I think with that sort of quality control in place, it would take a lot for a venue to dissuade me from from wanting to come back.
Usually for me, it's bad sound. If
Mm.
like I've been in places that just have the sound is so overwhelmingly loud that even if it looks good, it's unbearable to listen to. And if the band can't control it because it's just overdone, it's tough. It's tough to enjoy a show.
There has been some concerts where that's happened, and you get through it for the first 45 minutes, and then at some point you're just like, I need to get out of here. And I've
And I
definitely
love
been in
loud
that
music. Don't
situation
get me
before.
wrong. I've been in bands half my life and I love playing loud music, but there's a level of loud that is just punishing. And
Yeah.
that's usually what turns me off to a venue. What venue have you seen the most shows in, do you think?
Probably the Xfinity Center in
Mhm.
Mansfield, and like you had mentioned, about half under this overhang, actual seats, and then the rest is lawns. People bring seats, towels, blankets, having a good time out there. But yeah, if I've seen somewhere around 30 shows, I'd imagine about half have been at Xfinity. That's only 25 minutes from where I live. That's sort of that middle area that most good performing artists are in, where they can't sell out a TD Garden, a Fenway Park, or a Gillette, but you can come and sell 18,000 tickets or 15,000 tickets at Xfinity,
Right.
no problem. So I've had a lot of really great experiences over at Xfinity.
There's definitely a whole series of bands in today's world, especially today's music world, that just tour those amphitheaters in the
Mhm.
summer. And they go out in the summer, they tour all the amphitheaters like that across the country, and then they spend 5 months or 6 months at home, and then they do it again. And they're mostly legacy acts, but they're also, as you mentioned, up and coming bands that aren't ready to sell out the
Mhm.
Garden yet, or not certainly not ready to sell out Fenway Park or Gillette Stadium. So those are all stepping stones, and it's more fun for me to watch shows there where it's an up and coming act and they're moving out of the clubs, but they're not ready to go to a full size arena yet. And so they do the amphitheaters. But I also love all the legacy acts because they're the bands from my childhood. So I like seeing them, and they really are dedicated to that amphitheater circuit. I like those shows too. I like, and they have them here. They have one on Long Island. They have one in New Jersey. They have them across the country. I mean, Alpine Valley in Wisconsin is one of the famous ones. There's some really great ones around the country, and we've already talked about it. But is there a type of show? And I've kind of categorized shows. We've talked about it today: clubs, arenas, stadiums, festivals, the amphitheaters and the clubs. Is there something that you do or don't like, especially? Like, I have a hard time at festivals. For me personally, festivals is not my thing because it's not organized well. And I may be here and I have a good seat for the middle of the day show, but then I missed my chance to get up front for one of the big bands later. But I want to see all the bands. I don't want to just wait all day in the front, for the headliner. So is there anything for you? I mean, clubs are certainly fun, and you mentioned amphitheaters. Is there anything you don't like? Any type of show you don't like?
Yeah, the only thing I'd say there is when the show gets too big. Being at Gillette Stadium with 65,000 people in there. I've also seen Kenny Chesney at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome in Atlanta, where the Atlanta Falcons play, and
Yeah.
that's 80,000 people. And that's not how live music is supposed to be consumed. I'm not the authority on that. I shouldn't go with the absolute there, but I don't think in front of 80,000 people where, I mean, how many? 50,000 are watching the screens, 60,000 are watching the screens rather than Kenny because you're too far away. You're not
Mhm.
actually getting to hear the music. It's coming from behind you or to the sides and the thousands of speakers throughout the stadium. So, as I mentioned, I love the smaller venues, the clubs, and all those smaller music venues. But I don't think, at a certain point, I think you lose intimacy so quickly and that connection with the artist. And I'm not trying to have an intimate connection with Kenny Chesney or Luke Bryan, 65,000 other people, but it would be nice if I could watch the show not on a 200-foot screen. So I think that's the point when I'm not as much a fan of it. I'm also such a massive comedy fan. I love seeing stand up. I go to a lot of stand up shows, and I recently saw my first arena show and I loved it. I laughed the entire time. It was absolutely amazing. But afterwards, I was thinking, well, I'm used to seeing a show with 300 people in the room or 1,000, and there was 8,000 other people in this room. Little bit of a different vibe when you're trying to laugh and get all the little parts of a joke. And music's not quite that way, but I think the bigger you get, you lose a lot of those little things.
Who was the comedy show that played in an arena? Which one?
Yeah,
Which
so this
comedian?
was Theo Vaughn
Oh
over
yeah,
in Amherst. So I saw him at the Mullins Arena, which is where UMass Amherst, their basketball team, plays.
right, right. My daughter went to UMass Amherst,
Oh, amazing.
so I know where it is. Yeah, it's funny that the stadiums, unfortunately, are really where the only place you can see a massive, successful artist. But they're if unless you have incredible seats, which cost an arm and a leg, and you're sitting in the back of the arena. The worst part for me is that the sound travels slower than the visuals because sound travels slower than light. And so you see the artist raise their hand or the drummer hit the snare, and then half a beat later, you hear that hit. It's super weird. That always threw me off. And of course, you only see it on the screens. It's just not perfect. But
Exactly.
I
There
don't
is
know.
no perfect system at that size of a show. There's
Right.
just too many complications, which is why there's 1,000 different light packages and why there's fireworks going off because they need to fill that space because they're trying to distract you with a million of those things going on. Taylor
Yeah.
Swift, I've never seen her perform, but there's fireworks going off at her shows and smoke bombs and there's, lights and they're doing all this crazy stuff. You have to add all of that in when you're one person on a stage in front of 70,000 people. There's a lot more that goes into it.
Yeah, let me tell you, she's not one person on a stage. There are
Oh,
like 30 other people on the stage with her. I
sounds like
saw
you've
her in
been.
somewhere around 2016, and it was quite a show. And then apparently she just was on tour last year with an even bigger show. So she knows how to do it, but it's not intimate. There's
Yeah.
certainly nothing intimate about it. But yeah, it's a trade-off. And so it is kind of fun to be in a club with a band that hasn't really broken yet, like your friend's band, Flip Turn, and watch them ascend and watch them mature. And you hope that they get successful enough they can play arenas, but maybe you kind of hope they don't get so successful that they're playing football stadiums and you're not going to be able to have as much fun as you used to have.
Well, luckily, if I stay in Dylan's good graces, I'll get those VIP tickets, and I can be right up front, or I can be on side stage. So I'll
Right. There
still
you
get
go.
a
Then
good
you won't care. Football stadium away.
yeah.
That's great. I ask a couple of questions of people about how their enjoyment of live music translates with music media. So, do you have a favorite live recording of a song, a favorite live
Mm.
record, a live album, anything like that?
That is a fantastic question. I am definitely a person that prefers studio versions most of the time, but there are some specific ones. I don't know, whether they're Spotify sessions, what live recording it was, but Chris Cornell has a couple of my favorite ones ever. I mean, his cover of Nothing Compares to You and his cover of Billie Jean and Nearly Forgotten My Broken Heart. I think those are some of my
Oh, that's
favorite
a
live
great
tracks.
one. That one was great.
Yeah. And I
That
mean,
last, oof,
another rest in peace with Chris Cornell. He has one of my favorite voices of all time. I mean, everything he
agreed.
did, Soundgarden, Audio Slave, the solo stuff, just fantastic. But I'd say that a couple of those are probably my favorite live tracks.
Yeah.
Maroon 5 put out a really awesome live album too. And there's a million. There's definitely a million. There's all the famous and great Red Rocks recordings, you know what I mean? There's some really cool ones out there. What about
That's
you?
where I first heard you too. For me, my favorite live recording ever is Cream. So dating me a little bit. It's a Cream recording from 1968, I'm going to guess, of them doing Robert Johnson's Crossroad Blues, and they
Mm.
called it Crossroads. A very high energy version with Clapton. Really, Clapton sang it. Clapton played the lead. It was blistering, super exciting. Every time I listen to it, I get the chills. So that's one. And the other one is from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame did two concerts, 2 nights in a row at Madison Square Garden to celebrate their 25th anniversary. This is years ago now, sadly. And U2 was the headliner the first night, and Springsteen was the headliner the second
Wow.
night. But the first night, U2 and all the main artists brought out other Hall of Fame artists. And so U2 during their set brought out Bruce. And my favorite song of all time is I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For by U2. And Bruce sang it with them. And so he and Bono traded lines. And every time I listen to it, I get chills. Like, it is the most emotional thing. And it's so great in my mind for me. And I know everyone has their own, that's totally personal. But to ask what my favorite live recording is, it's probably that.
Well, I know what I'm listening to right after this. You
You can
too.
watch the video of it. It's even better if you watch the video of it.
I
It's
will. You
it's
two is one of my dad's favorite bands. I've had the chance to see them live, when I was much younger as well, and I love so much of their music and what they stand for. So I can only imagine seeing Bono and Bruce up there together.
oh,
I'm excited to check that out.
it's really something. And I mean, I'm a Bruce is my favorite artist by a long shot, and the person I've seen the most. Um and he's really apparently pretty friendly with Bono, and he's sung with them many times
Mhm.
before. And so by the time they got to that show, they already had this act kind of well down as they're trading off verses and singing complimentary. Like at the end, you'll hear Bono sings a line from a Bruce song while Bruce is singing the outro to I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. And it perfectly weaves together and it's exceptional. So that to me is the epitome of a surprise guest coming out and suiting the band that's playing and doing something that transcends the song, which is already a great song, and brings it to another level. And you don't even have to have been in the arena to feel that level of enthusiasm and excitement. So I hope you find it as enjoyable, or at least even half as enjoyable as I do.
Well, I'll definitely let you know. I'll definitely check it out tonight. I mean, you got to be itching to get out to that Sphere out in Vegas, then, huh?
No,
No.
I that's a lot for me. I to travel all the way to Vegas just to get crammed into that thing, and that looks overwhelming to me. I maybe it's the greatest concert experience ever. I'm not ready. It's funny. My stepbrother and nephew went out and saw it right when it started, and they raved about it. I think they're almost done in their run. I think they finished
Yeah.
in a couple of weeks. It looks amazing. The videos I've seen look just a lot. It's sensory overload.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it would be a very overwhelming experience. Nothing I would ever set out to go do, but if I happened to be in Vegas and could go see a show, I'd love to. But definitely not something I'd set aside a week for. To go make that
Yeah,
happen.
I mean, I like going to Vegas, but I like going. There are other things I would do, and I don't know that I have enough money to justify making the bank to see it. But I would love to see it. If everything was equal, I would definitely
Yeah,
go see it.
those Adele and U2 tickets out in Vegas are pretty darn expensive.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I go to see the Beatles Cirque du Soleil show when I'm out there. I see
Oh,
it
nice.
every time I'm out there, and that's fantastic.
Very cool.
Couple questions. These are my bucket list questions. So, are there any concert venues that you haven't been to yet, but you really want to go to?
Yeah, number one, just right off the top of my head, is Red Rocks. I mean, talk about the coolest music venue possible. And again, my friend Dylan with Flip Turn, they were opening up for a few different bands last year. One of them was Mount Joy, who I'm a massive fan of as well. Hoping to see them this summer. And Mount Joy brought them out for 2 nights, sold out at Red Rocks. So my buddy got to play 2 sold out nights in front of the 10,000 people at Red Rocks, and that just I think is the coolest outdoor venue that I've seen. So I'm dying to go to a show at Red Rocks. I would love to be there. That's my dream venue to catch a show at.
By the way, mine too. That and the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville are the two
Mm.
places that I haven't been to that I'm dying to go to. Now, did your buddy tell you what it was like playing there?
Yeah. I mean, just all the adjectives you could imagine. He just said really.
There wasn't like artists don't like playing there because it's cold and they don't like it because the sound sucks or anything. It's all good.
Yeah, he didn't share any of that with me when we had chatted about it a couple times. He had gotten to go the day before and earlier to set up, and he's just sitting sending pictures out on those massive steps, really just sort of in disbelief, that he's getting that opportunity. And also, that was the biggest crowd that they had played for as well. I think the capacity is right under 10,000, 2 sold out shows back to back. And, people aren't there for Flip Turn, they're there for Mount Joy, but still, once the lights go off, everyone's locked into you. So really, really magical experience. I mean, he just had a million different superlatives to say about it. He had nothing but amazing things. And of course, the end of the conversation is, and at some point we got to get you there. We're working towards when are you going to be selling it out? So
Right, right, exactly. And I'm glad to hear that because I always worry that the places I love as a fan, the artists hate. But
mm,
I'm glad to hear that's not one of them because I'm really dying to get out there. Now, if you could see any artist, living or dead, any point in history perform,
uh,
what's your dream bucket list concert that you'd love to see?
whew, what an amazing question. I almost feel like I have to pick someone that is dead or not touring. You know what I mean? Because the chance is still out there for a living show. So it's funny. The first person that or first band that came to mind immediately was just the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I love the
Okay.
Chili's, and I don't know anything about their live performances other than Flea being naked for most of them. But I think I just imagine from knowing 20 of their songs and loving them for however many years. I just imagine that has to be such an unbelievable live show just from listening to the music and not doing any research. And I know a little bit about Anthony Kiedis and those guys, but I think that the Chili's just they have to be just amazing, amazing live performers. So that would be one, and then I would think sort of just like an all-time prime Rolling Stones show too would probably be one of them.
Yeah.
There's no one that I'm thinking other than those two. I think those would probably be my top two if I could have a little dream lineup going on.
That sounds good to me. I think the Chili's are a great live band. I think you would absolutely what you think is 100% right. They're very high energy, totally committed. They're totally locked in when they play. It's obvious they're very close
Yeah,
and musically close. Not, I don't know how friendly they are, but they seem pretty friendly too. But they're very locked in musically, and it comes off. They're really great. And Chad, the drummer, has such great energy, and Anthony and Flea and John. It's a great band. And the Rolling Stones, I've seen 6 times over the years since 1981 was the first time I saw them. And let me tell you, I wish I had seen the 1972 tour or the
yeah,
1975 tour. that was them at their height of their power, at their greatest.
My
Um,
dad's probably seen them a similar amount. I don't know, 6, 8,
yeah,
something like that in there. And he's had such a big influence on the music we listen to. And I see clips of Mick Jagger now still performing, 80 years old, dancing the same way. And it just blows your mind. So if they're still putting on that show at 80 and 70 and 60 and 50, yeah, imagine them in 1972. It would have been incredible.
yeah, I'm going to see him in May.
Oh, that's amazing. Where are they playing?
MetLife Stadium,
Ah,
where the
that's going to
Giants
be
and Jets
awesome.
play. Yeah, but it's one of those things. It's so big that I think our seats are pretty good, so it will be okay. But you go because how many more times am I going to get to see the Rolling Stones? I saw them in 1981, and now 2024. That's a pretty impressive 43-year span. That's still amazing. So
Geez,
I'm
what a
very excited
their
about that.
catalog. I mean, they could play 3 full shows and still have 3 shows of music they haven't touched yet. I mean, it
That's right.
is
They
incredible what
they
they've done.
don't do that, but I wish they would because they have so many great songs. I mean, they wrote essentially the blueprint for popular blues-based rock and roll,
Mm,
right? I mean, they took Chuck Berry and they
yeah.
brought it back, when Chuck Berry was no longer popular, and they made it popular again.
All right.
Amazing.
So, I know you're doing the interview, but what's your favorite all-time Stone song if you had to pick one?
That is a great question. My favorite Rolling Stone song by far, bar none, is "Tumbling Dice."
Tumbling Dice, I love it. I'm going to
It's
have a
it's
whole list of music tonight just from this guy. I'm going to be in the
yeah.
weeds tonight.
I mean, there are a ton that I love. I love "Sympathy for the Devil." I love "All Down the Line." Really, my favorite Stones record is "Beggar's Banquet," which has "Sympathy for the Devil" and other great songs. But it's almost like an acoustic record, other than "Sympathy for the Devil." But it's a great record, and that started off a 4-album run of theirs that I don't think any band has or will ever top. Maybe the Beatles, but I don't think the Beatles even produced 4 records in a row that were of such excellent quality, ending with Sticky Fingers. But from 68 to 72, they produced so much essential music and singles on top of it. They were great. And so seeing them at the end of that in 1972 would have been great. But Tumbling Dice is the record for me for sure.
It's an
How about
amazing.
you?
Mine, I think is Memory Motel. I think
Oh,
that,
good one.
yeah, that's always been a favorite of mine. And the little few seconds of Keith Richards singing, halfway
Mhm.
through the song and everything, getting everyone involved, and just, I mean, that's got to be 6.5, 7 minutes long, I'd imagine. I don't know off the top of my
Yeah,
head. That's a long track, but
yeah.
amazing song, amazing song. I'd go
Great
with that
record.
as my favorite Stones
Yeah, that's a
record.
good one too. I can't argue. It's fantastic. All right, wrapping it up, is there anyone that you'd love to meet? Is there a musician you'd love to meet?
Is
Bucket
there
list stuff.
If there was a musician I could meet, we talking hang out for a few minutes. We talking grab dinner. So I'd say so. My 2 favorite artists, as I mentioned, Khalid is probably my favorite
Mhm.
artist, and you know he's my age. I've been listening to him, as I mentioned, from high school through now. So high school, college, through COVID, afterwards. So like during all these important years, and I mentioned that live experience with him singing a couple songs acoustic and everything, and I love his music. I love what he stands for. We're the same age. He's as awful at dancing as I am when he's on stage. So he's just up there being goofy and being himself, which I love. And
That's great.
so I'd love to get to meet and hang out with him. And then my other favorite artist getting into rap is J. Cole. I am as big of a J. Cole fan as there is. Absolutely love everything he's ever put out. And he's one of those rappers that just does so much good work that goes unnoticed, and I'd love to just pick his brain. He's the best lyrical rapper ever. He is an absolute poet with his words and a surgeon with his words. He's really fascinating to me, and especially when it comes to rap, I listen to the lyrics more than anything else. A lot of people are in for the beats and the loud music and all that stuff, which is fine, but I don't think that there is a lyricist in hip hop and rap that touches J. Cole. And I was about to call him Jermaine, like we're friends. That doesn't. No one's as good as Jermaine, but
There you go. You could say it. Maybe
but
that's how you become friends. When he sees this, he's going to be like, "That Chandler's the guy I want to get to talk to."
Absolutely. So I'd love to get to hang out with him and just pick his brain. How do you get a quadruple entendre in two lyrics? How do you do that? I watch lyric breakdown videos of him, so I'd love to just get to pick his brain and figure out his writing process. I'm not a musician, but I do enjoy writing, and I'm always fascinated how different people communicate and are able to figure out different ways to communicate. So the fact that he's the writer he is, I'd love to get to chat with him. I'm such a big fan. Spotify Wrapped, how they send that to you at the end of the year? I was in his top 0.05% of Spotify listeners, and I was like, whoa, I didn't know I was that into him,
But at the same time, he should, if he knows how to really hit the socials, he should reach out to his top 0.5% of listeners and send them something. Just thank you.
Well,
That's a commitment.
I'm here.
All right. Do you have any concerts coming up? Do you have any tickets for any concerts?
I have tickets to a smaller artist in April who's going to be playing. Where is he? I think it's Roadrunner, which is a couple thousand seat venue in Boston that I mentioned earlier. His
Who is
name's
that?
Hans.
Let's give some shout outs to smaller artists. Who is it that you're going to see?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. His name's Hans Williams. So he's a
Okay.
Vermont-based artist. He went to Tulane. He lives down in New Orleans now. But there's been this sort of little surge of some really cool folk indie artists out of the Northeast. I mean, Noah Kahn is one of the biggest artists on the planet right now. Small town from Vermont. And I think Hans Williams, I'm a huge fan of his music. He's a young guy doing some cool multi-genre music. Indie and alternative, I don't know what they mean anymore. Same as rock, I don't know what it means.
Right.
So I kind of consider this kid a indie folk artist, and he makes some really cool music, and I can't wait to go see him. I'm going with a couple of my good friends who are big fans as well. So coming up in April, that's the next event that I'm really excited for. Other than I
Great.
do have 3 flip turn shows on the docket this summer, but I can't just keep spamming flip turn during this conversation.
Well, you did say Flip Turn's playing up in somewhere in Boston too, right?
Yep. So they'll be playing House of Blues, I think, at the end of March, and then they'll be playing a few different venues. MGM, which is in the Seaport in Boston, they're opening up for Two Door Cinema Club, and who's the other one? It's a festival in Central Mass. I can't even think of who's out there.
At the House of Blues, are they the headliners?
Yes.
Okay.
They're headlining their own tour right now, which is pretty cool.
Cool. Well, great. That's all I got for you. What did I miss? Is there something I should have asked you that I didn't?
Anything else we can talk about?
I mean, there's always more we could talk
Yeah,
about.
I know. I mean, I don't want to. This is your show, so I can't sit here and interview you. But I mean, hey, I'd be happy to do this again anytime. We can talk offline about music anytime too. But I don't think there was
Good.
too much left uncovered when it comes to sort of the live concert experience. I'm such a fan of going to all these shows. I think people need to go to more live music. I think, especially after COVID and everything that happened, people need to get out and support these artists. And it's the only way that they're going to come back to your town, to your city. It's the way that they can go play a bigger venue, which means that you get to actually buy tickets when the last one was sold out. You got to go out and support live music and support these artists. So I'm so excited that I could come on here and talk about it a little bit and, have a fun music conversation. But to wrap it up, I would just say to anyone listening out there, look up your favorite artists, go to their website, go to their Instagram and hit that tour button. You might be surprised. I've looked at artists and I say, wow, they're in Boston in 4 weeks, and I end up going to the show. It's something that a lot of people really don't consider, which is funny. We're listening to music 24/7, headphones in the car while you're whatever it is. So I'd leave that little call to action to sort of wrap this conversation up. Go buy some concert tickets and support live music.
I love it. That's a great way to end up. Chandler, thank you so much. I appreciate your time today and your thoughtful responses. And maybe I'll see you up at the House of Blues at the end of March.
All right, amazing. Sounds good, Alex. Thank you.
Well, that's it for today's conversation. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back next Tuesday. And if you like what you heard today, we'd appreciate it if you would like and subscribe or follow to make sure you get notified about every new episode. And please tell your friends. Additionally, we want to know what you think. So leave us a comment and we'll try to respond to every one of them. The Rock and Roll Show podcast is a World Highway Media production. I'm your host, Alex Gadd. And until next time, rock on.